Hi, this is Scott Garibay. Today I want to talk about a sophisticated understanding of what Dungeons & Dragons is and is not, rather than a primitive understanding, which I think a lot of people have today about what Dungeons & Dragons is and what Dungeons & Dragons is not. So let's dive into this, okay? So let's take a look. Let's talk about the Command Module Columbia. Command Module Columbia is it went to the moon. It's part of the vehicle that went to the moon in 1969. I'll show you a picture of it. So this is the Command Module Columbia. Okay, this is what the astronauts traveled in this to the moon, and then they came back from the moon in Command Module Columbia. Okay, now what is Command Module Columbia? Okay, it's a little bit of a complex question. Okay, one thing that somebody could say is the following. Command Module Columbia is a boat. Now, why would somebody say Command Module Columbia is a boat, right? Well, they wouldn't be, there is evidence that Command Module Columbia is a boat, okay? It spent time in the ocean with people inside it. It floated on the water, and if you opened the door and stuck a paddle out, you could row it like a boat, right? It did float. It did spend time in the ocean. It had people in it. All attributes that would be similar to a boat, but Command Module Columbia is not a boat. All right, here we go. All right. The statement, Command Module Columbia is a boat, is similar to the statement Dungeons & Dragons is a game. This is purely my opinion, but I am trying to push this opinion to get it so that the rest of the Dungeons & Dragons community will accept the fact. I'm the only person who believes this right now. So I get to accept what I believe is a fact. I believe I know this before other people, right? And I am presenting it to get to the idea that Dungeons & Dragons is not a game, and that the D&D community will accept that and give it to the rest of the world. And it's not for a small reason. I'm going to tell you before this video is over why I'm doing this and why this is so important to me. I am of the firm belief that Dungeons & Dragons is not a game, okay? And I think that the statement, Command Module Columbia is a boat, is wrong, and it's exactly equivalent to the statement Dungeons & Dragons is a game. Yes, Dungeons & Dragons is called by many people, and even by its owner, a game. Now, first of all, let's talk about that. Why, if the owner's calling it a game, why would we believe that? Well, first of all, the owners of Dungeons & Dragons, they didn't get it because they like Dungeons & Dragons. They got it because they like the Pokemon card game, which they kept the license for 5 years, right? Dungeons & Dragons is a vestigial nub on the end of Magic the Gathering and Pokemon collectible card games. That's it, right? Like, Hasbro is not intimately caring about this intellectual property. So it really doesn't matter that much what they say it is, in my opinion. And if you think I'm wrong, and that like the owner should have complete command and get to do what they want with their intellectual property, take a look at the Zack Snyder cut, right? Like basically DC was like, we know what a good movie is. We're gonna make this movie. Here's your movie. And the DC community said, heck to the no, recut that and give it to us. And DC is now spending, Warner Brothers is now spending $40 million recutting it to be exactly what the community told them it should be, right? So communities have the ability to tell owners, particularly disengaged owners, right, what their product is, especially if they know it better than the owners. And trust me, the D&D community knows Dungeons & Dragons way better than its current owner, Hasbro, because they've spent more time with it. Like, there are people on this planet who have spent 47 years with Dungeons & Dragons. Hasbro's known it for 21 to be exact, right? They acquired it in 1999. All right, so let's keep going here. All right, so Command Module Columbia, what is it actually? It's a spacecraft. Command Module Columbia is a spacecraft, okay? That's what it truly is. It's not a boat. And anybody who, if you ask somebody, hey, what's Command Module Columbia? And they said, oh, that's a boat. You'd be like, that's an incredibly, if you were being really kind, you would say that's an incredibly primitive understanding of that. Do you know what space travel is? Right? And, well, if you were being kind, you wouldn't say the last part. uh, but yeah, and you would understand that by saying Command Module Columbia is a boat, it's wrong. It's just flat out wrong, right? Okay. So let's take a look at Dungeons and Dragons. What is it? Dungeons and Dragons is a cultural catalyst. It is an element of Americana. It is a vector for art. It is a vector for literature. It is the first iSport. Okay, this is what it is. These things are important. This is real. Okay. Now, why is it important that we, as the Dungeons and Dragons community, stop saying that Dungeons and Dragons is a game? Here's why. The term Dungeons and Dragons is a game, okay, is used to do the following. It's used to belittle. It's used to control. What is it used to belittle and control? It's used to belittle the D&D community, okay? It's used to belittle Gary Gygax. You're like, wait a second. It's used to belittle and control Gary Gygax. So you're like, wait. You know, Gary Gygax passed in 2008. Yes, of course, Gary Gygax passed in 2008. How could you control somebody who had passed? You can absolutely control people who have passed. I mean, like, is anybody aware of the movie Rise of Skywalker? You know, there's scenes she's in after she has passed. You know, and so, you know, and we will, and also Admiral Tarkin is in Grand Moff Tarkin is in Rogue One. I believe pretty sure it was Rogue One. And he's in that film. That actor was dead, was passed, right? There are people controlling that actor's image now, right? So you can absolutely control someone who is passed, right? And the term D&D as a game is being used to control Gary Gygax, in my opinion. His legacy, what he stood for, what he built, all those things, okay? All right, next, it's being used to control stalwarts. What are stalwarts? It is my opinion that the Dungeons and Dragons community breaks into three groups. Casuals, right? These are people who play Dungeons and Dragons. They play it any way they want. They're not trying to improve their games. And they listen to people that say, hey, you're running a nonsense game? I love that. You keep doing that, buddy. Whatever's fun for you. Don't make that game better for you or your players. Just whatever nonsense you want to do is fine, right? Casuals. Emergents. People are like, wait a second. I've been playing D&D for a while, but it's starting to change me. You know, when I inhabit another character, and I have to think, if I have to think for my character, am I lawful good or am I chaotic evil? Maybe I should ask that question about myself. Gee, nothing I've ever done before has really made me question my morality every single time I did it, right? Like, this, and emergence of people are like, is this more than a game? Yeah, it is, right? And then stalwarts. Let's talk about stalwarts, right? The term Dungeons and Dragons is a game is being used to belittle and control stalwarts. Stalwarts are people who are considering or have already dedicated vast portions, if not their entire lives, to Dungeons and Dragons. There are people who've done this, right? And they make incredible sacrifices. They pour hours of time into the game. They really invest themselves and they sacrifice for the game. And they are incredibly dedicated to being the very best dungeon masters they can and being the very best players they are. Now, why would you want to belittle or control these people? Well, a lot of people think it's crazy to dedicate your life to a game like Dungeons and Dragons. But then millions of people are like, oh, yeah, so literally tens, if not hundreds of thousands of professional athletes often are dedicating their entire lives to the sport, right? They're dedicating their youth to training. They're dedicating their prime years to playing. They're dedicating their years after that to coaching. And then they're dedicating their years after that to commentary. Nobody thinks about it for one. Nobody questions it. And some people for sports have made incredible sacrifices, right? And what happens for them? They're not mocked. They're not belittled. They're not tried to be controlled. People make movies about them and quote them, right? D&D is not one speck less important than American football, right? And, you know, people who dedicate their lives to American football are held as heroes. And people who are considering or have already dedicated their lives to Dungeons and Dragons are mocked. They're trying to be they're trying to be controlled by the term Dungeons and Dragons game. It is my opinion that Dungeons and Dragons is not a game, right? I think that's a fact, right? And I think I have enough evidence to believe that already, right? I understand it's going to take other people a while to get there. I get that, right? But we as a Dungeons and Dragons community have the right to declare what the game is. Exactly the same way the DC community declared what the DC, you know, what the Justice League film should be. This is we have part of this, right? And the reality is, you know, how long is Hasbro going to own this thing? There was considerable rumors in 2020 that they were staging it to get sold. The D&D community needs to be engaged and really need to be moving forward on this stuff. I know what I'm saying. I know I'm out in left field on this. I know no one else is saying this. I'm totally aware of that, right? I would just ask you to think, okay, just because somebody is the only person saying it, that doesn't mean they're wrong. So just consider this, right? And if you think that it's not okay to think Dungeons & Dragons is not a game, right? And that this is really far more than a game, right? Just compare it to American football. Look at the weight that is being put on American football. And then think to yourself for 1 second, is Dungeons & Dragons one iota less important than American football? I pose to you not. It is not. And that this is worth people dedicating their entire lives to it. You know, as long as they're doing it in a peaceful, respectful, careful manner, exactly the same way you could do if you were dedicating yourself to American football, it's okay, right? So the reality is, I just want to remind you, what is Dungeons and Dragons, right? Dungeons and Dragons is a cultural catalyst, a culture catalyst, an element of Americana, a vector for art, a vector for literature, and the first iSport. And don't let anyone tell you it's just a game or that it's a game, or when you get serious about it, say it's a game. And also, I just really want you to think, if you're listening to D&T commentators that think it's a game, should you be dedicating your time to them, right? Should you be giving weight to what they're saying? And if you are a D&D commentator, think about what I've said. This is important. Our community deserves everything the American football community has. We can get there, right? I really feel Dungeons & Dragons is incredibly special. It really is unique and powerful, and we deserve for this to be recognized as a culture catalyst and a lot more. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Let me know if you think I'm right, if you think I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.